You love her voice, you love her looks. What Melissa loves are comic books. Hi, welcome back, or hi for the first time. This is a little preview of fall that we're experiencing this week, so I'm wearing this, and as appropriate because we're going to be talking about the fall of a major figure in comic book history today. But we're still doing the countdown to Superman, so let's pick up where we left off, which is at number 40, King Comics number 24. We just talked about Popeye last episode, so I'm definitely not talking about Popeye again in the anthology title that regularly featured him. Let's talk instead about a different strip, Ace Drummond. The aviator genre had been an ongoing success in comic strips since Hal Forrest's Tailspin Tommy debuted in 1928, and 6 years later, publishers were looking for a way to put a new spin on the genre. The King Features Syndicate decided that what they needed for their next aviator strip was authenticity. So for a writer, they hired Eddie Rickenbacker, a WW1 fighter pilot and Medal of Honor recipient, and Clayton Knight, a WW1 aviator who was loaned to the British from our Army Signal Corps, and then after the war was a book author and illustrator for The New Yorker. The combination worked, particularly since Rickenbacker was a war hero and had name recognition, and Knight drew planes very well. At the height of its popularity, this strip was carried in over 130 newspapers and spawned a movie serial in 1936. But the strip sputtered out and crashed by 1939 and disappeared, and so we'll move on. Number 39, Popular Comics number 27, Little Orphan Annie. Despite its overwhelming popularity in the 1930s, dreaming about being adopted by a rich man like Daddy Warbucks must have been the 1930s equivalent of wishing you could win the lottery. I have never given Little Orphan Annie its own spotlight episode, and this episode still won't be one. In this episode, Annie's first meeting with the Asp is reprinted. Punjab had already proven to be a popular character, so it was only natural that Harold Gray would try introducing a second bodyguard for Oliver Warbucks. While Punjab seems to have been some kind of magician, the Asp only had natural abilities at his disposal, despite his unusual appearance. Natural, anyway, for a master assassin. We'll later learn in 1939 that the Asp is based out of Istanbul when not working for Warbucks, where he is master to other assassins. Past that, we never learn much about the Asp's life story, which is perhaps for the best, keeping the character enigmatic and mysterious. Moving on to number 38, from More Fun Comics number 30, Johnnie Law. Johnnie Law is a plainclothes police detective in some major urban metropolis that looks like New York City, and thanks to Will Eli's extensive use of solid black inking, has a nice film noir feel to it. This issue feels even more film noir than usual because the Johnnie Law feature is in black and white this time. That probably wasn't an aesthetics driven decision though, but a cost driven one. Much of More Fun Comics is still lacking color, or at least full color. Johnnie Law Johnnie Law was a latecomer to More Fun Comics, only having debuted 9 issues earlier. So far, Johnny has gone after an arsonist and a marijuana racket, and I just talked about how timely that issue was last episode. His adventures are serialized, but at 4 pages an issue, still wrap up in 16 to 20 pages, not far off from modern day comic book lengths. The most interesting thing I can say about Johnnie Law is a spoiler from 1939 in our future, when his feature is discontinued. Most heroes just disappear when their features are discontinued, but Johnny went out with a bang, literally, apparently dying in a car bomb explosion. Moving on, 1937, Detective Comics number 13. We're going to be talking this time about, well, this time I wanted to talk about the Pine Road Mystery. Standalone stories with heroes we'll never see again was more of a comics magazine thing, and National liked to reuse heroes in ongoing serialized features, but they didn't always go that route, and some issues like this one has a complete story in it. This one is written and drawn by Russell Cole, who went by the pen name of Elger, and I last talked about him in episode 19. His distinctive cartoony style can be too easily dismissed, and you may recall that his ongoing character in More Fun Comics, Woozy Watts, was on a fairly serious island mystery adventure when we last talked about him. This one is an even more serious mystery, as a banker has been shot and killed. The obvious suspect is the old man who had a long-standing feud with the banker, and the town fool even says he saw the old man do it. But there are also four witnesses who place the old man asleep in his study at the same time. It's an intriguing setup for a mystery, but the pacing is off, and too many of the 8 pages are spent on setup, leaving the story's resolution to be quickly explained to us even before we get to see the clues. So we'll move on. Number 36, the comics number 7, Rod Ryan of the Sky Police. Paul Jepson was a 25-year-old illustrator who had been working for pulp magazines like Snappy Romances and Spicy Adventures, but in 1935 landed a chance to join the lucrative comic strip field. His first creation was Rod Ryan of the Sky Police, an intergalactic police force in the year 2500. While not a Flash Gordon clone per se, Rod Ryan's inspiration was pretty clear. Other things are very clear in the strip too, like who the villains are, since the bad guy aliens are called Mephitians from the planet Memphis, and they all look like the devil Mephisto. Rod gets thrown into the dungeon where he doesn't even put up a fight when a 15-foot tall ape grabs him to eat him. Rod is saved twice by Karen, the daughter of the Sky Police chief, who had been missing and presumed dead, but was actually a prisoner of Mephitian pirates. They then flee for their lives from subterranean Batmen before being subdued by a gas bomb. Rod certainly doesn't acquit himself well in the span of these 4 pages. The Rod Ryan strip didn't run long, but its reprint history in comics is more interesting than the comic strip itself. Dell Comics picked up the strip and ran with it for only 6 issues of the comics before deciding to dump the strip in favor of something else, but then it was resurrected almost a year later, minor spoilers here, by DC Comics, who's going to acquire the reprint rights to make it the only comic strip reprint featured in their new title, Flash Comics. Why Rod Ryan? Well, I might wait to cover that when we get to 1940 to revisit this question. So, see you then. But first, 1935, New Adventure Comics number 25. New Adventure Comics, for this issue only, briefly toys with the idea of becoming a bi-monthly title. Again, we seem to be seeing more and more signs that National just can't keep their boat afloat. And if you weren't impressed by Rod Ryan, then you may be even more disappointed by Steve Conrad, who we've talked about before in episode 40. Steve and his girlfriend Myra need rescuing twice by an ape. It's consistently called a monkey, but it clearly looks like an ape. First, it throws a barb like a spear at a crocodile attacking Steve and kills it, something no ape or monkey has ever done. And then when Steve and Myra are sinking in quicksand, the ape throws something at the head of a passing, surprisingly nerdy-looking explorer to get his attention and lead him to the quicksand to help. But that's not really the important thing to talk about with this issue. I have been talking about Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson since episode 2, but the publisher and editor-in-chief of National, he is gone after this issue, kicked out of his own company. And to explain how and why this happened, I have to backtrack all the way back to the beginning and share another part of the story that I've never told you until now. You may recall that I have shared many times the supposition, including a minute or two ago, that along with circumstantial evidence supporting it, that National was always in financial difficulty. What we never talked about was how Malcolm got the money to start his comic books in the first place, and how this would turn out to be his undoing. To finance New Fun, his first comic book, he had to find a backer, and the backer was printing plant owner and magazine distributor Harry Donenfeld. Harry Donenfeld had founded the Independent News Company back in 1932 and now offered his company to distribute National's comic books and financial help for National in exchange for some control of National. When Malcolm wanted to start a third title, Detective Comics, he needed additional financial help, and here's one of those minor mysteries we can only speculate about. Did Malcolm go into this knowing he was going to need the help, but maybe he was gambling on it being such a success that he would finally be able to pay off his debts to Donenfeld, or did he think he had the money for a third title and needed the additional backing was unexpected? Regardless, the new arrangement with Harry was not good for Malcolm. He had to accept as equal partners Harry and Jack Leibowitz, Jack being Harry's right-hand man who handled the finances of Independent News Company. By this time in 1938, Harry and Jack had had enough of Malcolm's business being a money drain for them, and Donenfeld sued Wheel and Nicholson for non-payment. Malcolm was forced into bankruptcy, and Harry bought National from him. National still existed as a company that published more fun and new adventure comics, but it was essentially a dummy company at this point, controlled by Detective Comics Inc., the separate company responsible for publishing Detective Comics. So from this point on, I'll be using the name Detective Comics when I refer to any of Donenfeld's titles. And that is where we're going to pick up next time when we get to more of the countdown. Only 6 issues this time, so hopefully more next time as we move slowly closer to the debut of Superman. I hope to see you then, and bye for now.